Yo, what's up guys? Priz here, and welcome to a new type of video content. This video is for those who want to record your Launchpad videos in more of a professional way, or simply don't know how to go about setting up something like this before. So today I'll be going over my setup and also talk about some tips and tricks in order for you to achieve a look that you're happy with. Now, before I get into any details, I want to make it very clear that you do not need good equipment in order to get a nice looking video. I've seen many Launchpad artists improvise based off their own household items, and I highly encourage you to get creative if you do not have access to the equipment mentioned in this video. Alright, so now that we got that out the way, let's talk about my setup. The first things first is lighting. Lighting is the single most important factor to making your Launchpad video look good. If you're not into photo or videography, lighting just refers to the light sources used in a photo or video. Usually my lighting setup involves 3 lights, 1 filler background light, and then 2 lights on the sides of the video. So for my side lights, I used to use these small eMart LEDs. I bought these around 2020 because I wanted my own LEDs so I didn't have to steal the living room lamp from my parents all the time. However, I don't really recommend using these LEDs for a couple of reasons. One, because they're hardwired, meaning I'm limited to where outlets are in my room. They're also like extremely bright on their own. So I've had to use like napkins, paper towels, and cloths to diffuse and soften the light. If you want to invest in some lights and have the space to do so, I would recommend softboxes or wireless portable lights. If you don't have much space, I'd settle with using these Govee desk light bars, which some Launchpad artists such as Trizek, Evie, and I have been using. They're RGB, white temperature adjustable, and even though they are wired, they still function a lot better than my eMart LEDs. For filler light, I just use natural light most of the time. I like how it fills up the space easily, and most of the time there's shutters for me to adjust how bright I want the room to be. For some, the sun might not be the easiest to manipulate in terms of lighting, and sometimes it's hard to get consistency with it. If that's the case, we can opt to use a regular room lamp instead. I would also avoid using any overhead room lights due to potential harsh shadows on your hands and lack of brightness control. For my tripod, I use a very specific KNF concept tripod that has the ability to hang over my desk. If you want to use this exact tripod, it is a little bit of an investment, but if there's any equipment to invest in a Launchpad video, it would be a very nice tripod. Along with my tripod, I use a magic arm, which is basically this like little attachment that moves around and locks in place wherever you want it to be. I don't think it's the most necessary thing to the setup, but it does help make micro adjustments. So basically at the end of this magic arm, I have just a regular phone mount, nothing special, just a mount that screws onto the magic arm and is able to hold the phone to record the video. So on the topic of phones, throughout the years, I've used the Samsung Galaxy S9, S10 Plus, and now the S21 for my videos, which is this phone right here. I love the versatility of the pro settings in the Samsung camera app. I can change, the shutter speed, ISO, manual focus, and white balance settings to match whatever I'm going for. I have also used an iPhone SE camera, and if you want to compare Apple and Samsung cameras, refer to my Slushy Stay cover and also my Prince Fox Time Alone cover. So for my phone camera, I'm gonna go ahead and swap over to my actual phone camera's viewfinder so that you can see what settings I'm gonna be adjusting. So underneath the pro video setting, as you can see, there's a bunch of like manual settings I can be changing in here. Generally, I like to shoot ISO at under 400 because after 400 is when you start introducing grain into your videos. And nobody likes grain unless you're trying to go for that as like a stylistic choice, but try to keep it between 400 and 50 ISO. Next thing I like to check is obviously the shutter speed. Generally, I like to shoot around 160 to 190 of a shutter speed. As soon as you start shooting faster than 1/25th of a second on the shutter speed, you start to introduce like these flickering lights on the Launchpad. As you can see, if I go even lower, you can start to see this effect start to happen even more. So that's why I try to avoid going faster than 1/25th of a second, and always shoot at just 1/90th of a second or 1/60th. So after you have checked your shutter speed, make sure that your focus is on manual. You never want to be shooting at autofocus because it'll introduce focus breathing, which is not what you want. Some videos have it and it looks really unprofessional, looks really bad, and it's just don't do it. Just change your settings to manual focus and you wouldn't have to worry about it for the rest of your shoot. Another small thing to mention with camera settings, whether you're on a phone or a DSLR mirrorless camera, is your white balance settings. Generally, you don't want it to be on auto white balance, although most people do generally just set it on auto white balance. I would just recommend changing it to, whatever lighting colors you're using, or temperature, sorry. My temperature in my room is around 2700 Kelvin or lower. So just, what you can do is take a blank sheet of white paper or just check the whites on your Launchpad. For example, I can go to this color palette here and then just check the whites look correct to you. So, on other tips and tricks that I want to mention is when lighting your video, make sure that the Launchpad's lights aren't washed out. If they are, it means that your lighting is too bright. If you use custom firmware from Maniaxi, you can press the setup button and use the stock or any rainbow palette to check for lighting, as well as use it later in post for color grading. So for example, if I press the setup button right here and I have this RGB palette by NERC, which I'm going to go ahead and link down in the description for you to find as well. I can, check the palette here. This color palette right here is going to be super useful for you to check if, your colors look right in your camera, as well as for later in post-production when you're ready to color grade. You can use this part of the video to change all the colors to your liking. Generally, when you are lighting, you want to find a happy balance between seeing your hands and Launchpad lights. Also, keep in mind of any hard shadows when you put your hands in frame. This is more of a stylistic choice, whether or not you like hard shadows in your video, but it's something that you want to be aware of. Another thing I like to ensure is that my camera is flat as possible using an app called Bubble Level. There's many different apps that do the same thing. Just download one off the Google Play or Apple Store. It basically just ensures your phone is at a flat level, which is what you want recording a top-down video, so that you don't have to make too many adjustments later in post-production. After adjusting my camera to bubble level, I then align my Launchpad to the grid. Using a grid to make sure everything is evenly spaced will make your life a lot easier when editing. For most of my videos, I've recorded them on my desk, which has allowed me to connect the Launchpad to my PC. But if you're in a living situation where you can't quite fit enough space on your Launchpad to record a Launchpad video, and you have to set up elsewhere like on a table or a kitchen, you can opt to get a longer Launchpad cable that, connects from your PC all the way over to where you need it to be, or transfer your project to a laptop to go anywhere else. So to get more consistent results with lighting, what I would do is check your EV meter, which is like this number found at the bottom of the screen right here. If I change, let's say my ISO to 100, as you can see, my EV number changes from like +1 to -0.3. And for Launchpad videos, you generally want to shoot around like -0.3 to -1 to underexpose the video so that your lights will shine through. If you find that your hands are too dark, then what you can do is raise your exposure and just lower down the brightness of the Launchpad. Sometimes I just even lower down the brightness of the Launchpad to the lowest option right here on custom firmware. And that way your hands will still be bright and the lights will still shine through. A lot of people might think that video stabilization is good for Launchpad videos because you want the video to be as stable as possible. However, you should not be using video stabilization because it'll cause your video to look very warpy and wobbly. This happens because your camera thinks that your hand is movement and therefore it's going to try to warp around your hand's movements. So please turn off video stabilization before you record your Launchpad video. So I don't really have a straight answer for this question. I think that the default camera app for Samsung Galaxy is pretty good. I've never used any other phones besides an iPhone. Like, I haven't used a Samsung Note, I haven't used a Motorola phone, so I would not know what the problems and issues that would come along using the default camera app would be. But if you find another camera app that allows you to adjust professional camera settings such as ISO and shutter speed that isn't offered in your default camera app alone, then you should probably be using a camera app that can adjust those settings. All right, hopefully that was helpful to you. Now that we've finally set up the whole thing, all that's left to do is record the best Launchpad performance of your life. Good luck.